All right, let's lean over to Watts and Raven. Again, there's so many, like, this is the end of this person's run. This is the end of Erik Watts in TNA.
Oh my god, I have to prepare very good. Do you remember?
This is like the do you remember the show?
Yeah. Garrett.
No, we do the segment first, then we talk about the end.
Oh. Okay, run through it. Let's go.
December 10th Impact. Raven walked up to Watts. He hugged him. He's like, Watts had a bunch of bad names for DDP. Whereas Raven just called him Yoga Man, which is a better name.
I like that Yoga Man can be said with some respect.
But also some disdain.
Yeah.
Raven stirred the pot. Watts said he's going to own DDP. Before that, franchise asked DDP about the Watts thing. Raven walked up. Raven said that DDP doesn't know about the Watts and the thing. And Raven was very smug about this. Like, you don't know about Watts and the thing. Oh, how do you not know about Watts and the thing?
It's so stupid because it's not good manipulation. It's just him being like, oh, look at you, idiot. You don't know anything.
To be fair, DDP doesn't fall for it. And Erik Watts does. And I'll believe that Erik Watts would fall for the lamest manipulation.
That makes sense.
I watched enough Erik Watts and Goldilocks to know that Erik Watts will fall for anything.
Yeah, that's fair.
December 17th, we were meant to get an Erik Watts and Scott Matthews match. As Watts was making his entrance, DDP hit Matthews with the diamond cutter and stood waiting for Watts. Watts feigned getting in the ring, but then backed away and ran.
He banged him.
He did bang Scotty Matthews.
DDP banged Scotty Matthews. You heard it here first.
To be fair, this entire story is about potential banging, so...
That's about the thing, Garrett.
December 24th, DDP ran into Watts backstage. DDP said Watts would never understand what getting a title shot feels like. Raven strolls in and stokes the scent between them again.
It's pretty mean.
Yeah, it's not very nice.
He's also your friend. And you're like, you'll never know what a title shot's like.
Well, to be fair, he did attack him at the pay-per-view.
Well, he's meant to be. He's meant to be not being... This isn't meant to be working on him. He's just being mean to be mean, and I don't like it.
Watts literally came in and chokeslammed him.
Oh, Watts does that to a lot of people, alright?
It's his sign of friendship. It's his love language.
I could believe that could be some weird shit that him and Goldilocks are into.
December 31, DDP comes to the ring.
Say weird. I'm not kink-shaming Goldilocks and Erik Watts. The very real couple that existed for real.
DDP explains that there's two reasons he came to TNA: the chance to win the NWA title and to have fun. And there was never a time when he had more fun than having a beer with his pal Erik. And then he's like, what?
You were not talking about Bischoff.
He's like, what? Not Bischoff.
Me and Bischoff shared something else.
He wants to know what the deal is. Just gonna leave that hanging. Raven's Druids attack DDP.
Taking my headphones off.
DDP made a comeback to reveal one of them was Watts, the other was Raven. DDP hit Watts with a diamond cutter. Raven accuses DDP of being a bad friend for hitting Watts with the diamond cutter.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a good bit. It's like, attack him. DDP retaliates, and then you're like, what a terrible friend!
Yeah, that was like the one good bit of manipulation he ever did.
And it says DDP ruined Watts privately and now publicly, and DDP is going to pay.
Watts has already been ruined before in TNA canon.
Yeah, he's been broke. It's not a good run for him here.
Or is it a good run? We will see that later.
So January 7th, we finally understand what they're talking about. DDP confronts Raven. DDP, he says he knows that Raven called Watts' wife, the on-screen character Georgie, his shoot wife who we have seen on television.
Shoot wife.
Telling her that Watts has been screwing around on the road and then blaming DDP for it. Raven says he's got Watts wrapped around his finger.
Wait, shut up. She knows this. He was fucking Goldilocks on TV for a year.
But now they're back together, Liam. You saw it happen. You saw them reunite over a shared hatred of Goldilocks now instead of a love. And I believe we established in canon that in TNA story, his worked wife, which is his shoot wife, but the worked story of his shoot wife is that they got together after the Goldilocks relationship broke down.
No, because she called him like... whatever.
They just got married very quickly.
I don't care. I miss Goldilocks.
Raven was like, I've got Watts wrapped around my finger. And then he's like, Watts is standing right behind me, isn't he? And Watts was standing right behind him. Headbutted Raven, brawled into the building, dropped a hold on a chair, chokeslam.
You know what? Until this point, this is the best headbutt angle in TNA history.
Let me think. Has there been another one? There's not a lot of headbutts in this company. There should be more.
That there'll be a very famous one eventually.
So after Watts beat up Raven, him and DDP made amends. They hugged. They were happy.
Great.
You sound very excited about this story.
3 hours, 23 minutes.
Watts arrives to the next show, January 14th, but Raven hits him with a trash can and says he still has Watts wrapped around his finger, which leads us to Final Resolution, in which Erik Watts faces Raven in a pay-per-view match.
Why is there so many notes on this?
Oh, there's some weird shit about Erik Watts we'll get into.
Alright.
So Watts took the, I think, funniest inside-out clothesline bump I've ever seen in my life.
It might be an old time reaction from us on the watch along as well, because we both burst out. I think we were talking about something else completely, and we both burst out laughing.
I'm pretty sure it comes in the middle of us trying to convince ourselves that Erik Watts isn't bad at wrestling, because I'm putting over his reverse dropkick, and then immediately he does that inside out clothesline bump.
It is 100% me going like, listen, he's not great, and you going, no, he has some cool things, and then
he did get injured early in the match, to be fair to him, but that doesn't help.
No. And then Watts wins, which is very weird that Watts is beating Raven.
He hits a chokeslam that looks very bad, and then hits another one and wins.
And then there's like a very weird segment after it.
Yeah, so Raven gets on the microphone. He's like, "I'm so sorry, Watts. I hate DDP. He fucking sucks. But I apologize to you. I didn't."
Because like he almost stumbles into saying it by accident, and he corrects himself because he goes like, "I've always respected you, Erik, and I've never had any respect for DDP."
Man, fueled by spite. And then Watts is like, "Oh, all right," and starts turning around, and for some reason starts standing on the stage.
It makes no fucking sense why he would climb onto this precarious bit of the stage. It's like 1.5 feet gap between that and where he's standing. He only got on it to fall off of it.
Yeah, he stepped over onto it and Raven hit him with a trash can. And then he looked to take the bump and then turned around and realized the bump was in the other direction and fell in the opposite direction through a table off the stage.
It looked very dangerous. And then there's a table there. You don't even see it. So we took a table bump for nothing. You could have just put like a thing for him to fall into and not get hurt.
And pulled it away by the time the camera gets there.
Yeah.
That is the end of Erik Watts and TNA. There's a very strange note about this match.
Do we want to do that first, or do you want to do the...
Let's do this first and then the Watts retrospective.
We'll end it on a positive note.
Erik Watts' father, Bill Watts, has a website which reported last week that Erik attempted suicide. A friend of Watts says that Watts did not attempt suicide, and Watts himself denied it. Instead, a friend of Watts says that Watts was having marital problems, and in a call for attention, dramatized a suicide attempt by taking a couple more pills than he should have, and then got on the phone to a friend. Says one TNA wrestler, Erik is nice. I wish he was a prick, because he's nothing special in the ring. Raven is his friend, and he doesn't know how bad Erik is. I like the way they threw that into this piece about Erik Watts seemingly have some kind of, at least some degree of mental breakdown.
Yeah.
Well done, PW Torch. Watts suffered what was said to be a legitimate shoulder separation early in his match against Raven at Final Resolution. He didn't wrestle 2 nights later at the Impact tapings. He doesn't wrestle on any Impact tapings. But his shoulder was heavily taped.
Like, listen, could you imagine being Bill Watts' kid?
Yeah, and like he doesn't have a good relationship with his dad.
To be fair, no one has a good relationship with Bill Watts. Notorious, like, old-time insane person.
And what sounds like what happened here is Bill Watts wrote a letter to a few friends looking for advice on how to handle this situation about at least some degree of a cry for attention from Erik. Maybe not a full-on suicide attempt, but feigning a suicide attempt is nonetheless some kind of call out for help. And that letter leaked out in some way, and he didn't want it to leak out, but it did. And Watts denied ever trying to commit suicide, and it seems a very strange, very personal situation that should never spill out onto the internet. And then like TNA thought about whether or not they should even go ahead with the pay-per-view match they did in the end. And then even like people were doubting his, like Dave has a whole paragraph here about whether or not his shoulder was actually separated. He goes into like the game theory of like, he didn't realize the match was going badly and then faked a shoulder injury because he hurt the shoulder at the start of the match. It's like, you really do not want to give this man the benefit of the doubt, do you, Dave? But it's a very strange situation. Apparently his marriage with his wife Georgie wasn't going so well, which is, again, art imitating life, given the entire story was that his marriage with his wife Georgie isn't going so well.
Sorry, I'm just reading some of the other stuff.
Yeah, there's a bunch more details if you want to look at the show notes. We covered like the high level stuff of it. There's a lot more like in-depth details in the show notes from The Observer at tnachat.com.
There's a weird like note where Bill was talking about how like Erik has a rationale that he needs pain pills to wrestle, and that if you can't wrestle without pain pills, you need to get out of wrestling.
Which I think is a fair stand. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Especially if you're like, no offense to Erik Watts. Actually, a little offense to Erik Watts. But if you're like...
Yeah, a way to punch down.
Yeah, but if you're like, I really need pain pills to get through this and have these matches, it's like, pal, that's not worth it.
Maybe just get out of the business.
Yeah, it's not worth it in the best of scenarios. It's definitely not worth it for mid-card TV matches against a Raven.
No.
But now we can celebrate the big moments of Erik Watts' career.
Garrett,
Mm-hmm.
do you remember Erik Watts and Jeff Jarrett's on-again, off-again friendship?
Yeah, their frenemy relationship, their feud that turned into friendship, but Watts was like, I'm your friend, and Jarrett's like, I hate you, I don't want to be your friend, and Watts was like, please let me be your friend, and then I'll beat you up instead.
Do you remember when Erik Watts was hanging out with all those celebrities?
Oh yeah, there was like a decent caliber of celebrity too. The man he's in the know.
It was a fun segment. Garrett, do you remember the Failson World Order?
That's like the biggest missed opportunity here, because they debuted that stable of David Flair, Erik Watts, and Brian Lawler as a sub-stable of Sex, and it lasted like 2 weeks and everyone spun off doing their own thing, and I was really disappointed because I loved the stable of Fail Sons.
Garrett, do you remember when Erik Watts was feuding with Abyss and Kid Cash?
Yeah, that's when we realized he was a good tag team wrestler.
And he was a hell of a run-in guy. Come in and hit a couple big moves.
He is not a guy who can carry a match. He does not understand wrestling. But he's a guy who can give a hot tag to. He'll do a cool power move and then do his cool springboard reverse dropkick, which I love for reasons beyond comprehension. And he'll be good in a tag match. He's a good tag wrestler. Well done to Erik Watts. That's like the real takeaway, aside from the memes and the nonsense. That Erik Watts, sneakily good little tag wrestler.
Garrett, do you remember when Erik Watts was the DOA?
You know what? When I was thinking about the moments of Erik Watts' run, that didn't even come to my mind. So no!
Garrett, do you remember
that was like 7 months!
Red shirt security?
He was in charge of the company for like 7 months!
Yeah. Garrett, do you remember 4 1/4 star match Don Callis versus Erik Watts?
You love that match more than you love any match.
That match is so much fun. I guess we should hit it. Do you remember Erik Watts and Goldilocks?
What a relationship. From the moment of the turn, from the start of their relationship, which was entirely like, we hate each other, from the very beginning.
We hate each other, to the development of an early relationship, to the development of a 3-way relationship with Tracy or Trinity. I forget which one it was.
Trinity, I believe, Trinity. Yeah.
Yeah, which was dropped very quickly, to the development of them both being insane, but on the same page, and then eventually the rift in between them, when then, of course, Goldilocks is all about that money later on. It's a hell of a run, isn't it?
That's a 1-year angle, by the way. They told that story over the space of like a full year, maybe a little longer.
And it was perfect. Garrett, do you remember Victory Road 2004?
Yes, Erik Watts was in a tag team match.
Yeah, I just thought I'd mention it. Garrett, do you remember what Erik Watts did with The Thing? You haven't heard about The Thing? You don't remember The Thing?
He did go out on a low to make you feel worse about, or I guess less worse about the fact that he's leaving. That's like, oh, he's bad in the end. I'm okay.
He had, you know what's funny? I was going to say he had like that classic, what would you call it, charting of like coming in low, digging down, then shooting way up, and then going back down again on the way out. But honestly, I think it was kind of just up, down. Because I loved the introduction when he was just weird stalker Jeff Jarrett friend.
That was the best moments of your life.
And then the best moments of my life were the Goldilocks angles. Thank you very much. Garrett, I have one last. Do you remember?
Shoot.
Garrett, do you remember when Erik Watts interviewed Raven in Raven's sex dungeon?
Oh, yes. And they were like feuding for ages before that. And, hey, we're just having a chat.
Erik Watts, we wish you the best.
What a run.
What's a run?
It's a good question.
I'm very sad.